The Alpha King chose power over love, losing his mate and twins. The rejection that shattered everything. They say an Alpha's word is law, unbreakable, sacred, absolute. But what happens when the Alpha you trusted with your life, with your body, with your unborn child, destroys you with a single sentence? Welcome to my channel Crownfire Tales. Don't forget to like and subscribe because this story, it's going to wreck you in the best way possible. Isla Monroe stood in the rain outside the Silver Peak mansion, her hands trembling as she clutched the ultrasound photo to her chest. The paper was already soaked, the image of her 8-week-old baby blurring under the downpour. She had walked 3 miles through the storm because Alpha Caden Silver Peak, her mate, her protector, the father of her child, had refused to answer her calls for 2 days. The grand double doors of the estate loomed before her like the gates of hell. She raised her fist and pounded against the wood, ignoring the way her knuckles split and bled. "Caden," she screamed. "Caden, please. I need to talk to you." The door swung open, but it wasn't Caden. It was his mother, Luna Vivian Silver Peak, draped in furs and dripping with diamonds. The older woman's face twisted in disgust as she looked Isla up and down. "You have some nerve showing up here," Vivian hissed. "I need to see Caden," Isla said, her voice breaking. "I'm pregnant." "He needs to know." "He already knows." The words hit Isla like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her vision swimming. "What?" Vivian's smile was cold, cruel. "Did you really think my son would ruin his life for some nobody Omega? He's set to announce his engagement tonight. To Seraphine Ashford, daughter of the Northern Territories Alpha. A real Luna." "No," Isla whispered. "No, that's not possible. We're mates." The bond. The bond means nothing when power is on the line. From inside the house, Isla heard laughter. Music. The clinking of champagne glasses. A celebration. And then she saw him. Caden appeared in the doorway, looking devastatingly handsome in a tailored black suit. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. But his eyes, those eyes that once looked at her with hunger and tenderness, were now cold. Empty. "Caden," Isla breathed. Tell her. Tell her she's wrong." He didn't even flinch. "My mother is right, Isla. I can't be with you." The world tilted. Isla grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. "But I'm pregnant." "With your child. Are you sure it's mine?" The accusation shattered something inside her. Isla felt her wolf howl in anguish, the sound echoing through her bones. "How dare you," she whispered. "You're an Omega with no family, no status, no pack," Caden said, his voice flat and emotionless. "Did you really think I'd throw away an alliance with the Ashfords for you? This marriage secures my future. It secures my pack's survival." "What about our baby's survival?" Isla screamed. Caden's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He held it out to her. "What is this?" Isla asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Rejection papers. Sign them. There's also a check inside. $50,000. It should be enough for you to take care of things." Isla stared at the envelope like it was a venomous snake. "You want me to abort our child for money?" "I want you to disappear," Caden said coldly. "If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to declare you a rogue. You'll be hunted. Killed. Along with that thing inside you." Isla's knees buckled. She fell to the wet ground, clutching her stomach protectively. "Please," she sobbed. "Caden, please. I love you." "I never loved you, Isla. You were convenient. A distraction. Nothing more." Luna Vivian stepped forward and tossed the envelope into the mud at Isla's feet. "Take the money and leave. Or die. Your choice." The door slammed shut. Isla knelt in the rain for what felt like hours, her body shaking with sobs. Eventually, she picked up the envelope. The check inside was real. So were the rejection papers, already signed by Caden. All she had to do was sign her name, and the bond would be severed forever. But something inside her, some deep, primal instinct, refused to give up. She wouldn't sign. Not yet. Instead, she stood up, slipping the envelope into her jacket. She placed a protective hand on her stomach. "I'll protect you," she whispered to her unborn child. "I don't know how, but I will." She turned and walked away from the Silver Peak estate, away from the only life she'd ever known. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't have a plan. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty: Caden Silver Peak would regret what he'd done tonight. 3 months later, the diner of broken dreams. Isla wiped down the greasy counter of the 24-hour diner, her swollen belly barely hidden beneath her oversized uniform. She was surviving, barely. The $50,000 Caden had given her was long gone, spent on rent, food, and black market suppressants to hide her scent from other wolves. She was alone. Packless. Vulnerable. The bell above the door chimed, and Isla looked up out of habit. Then froze. The man who walked in was not human. That much was obvious. He moved with the lethal grace of a predator, his presence filling the room like a physical force. He was tall, easily 6'5", with broad shoulders, jet black hair, and eyes that gleamed like molten silver in the fluorescent light. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than Isla made in a year. Everything about him screamed power, danger, and wealth. And he was staring directly at her. Isla's instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet were rooted to the spot. The man approached the counter, his silver eyes scanning her from head to toe. When his gaze lingered on her stomach, his expression shifted, just for a moment, into something that looked almost like concern. "Coffee," he said. His voice was deep, smooth, and sent a shiver down Isla's spine. "Black." "Coming right up," Isla stammered, turning to the coffee pot with shaking hands. As she poured, she felt his gaze burning into her back. When she set the cup in front of him, he caught her wrist gently. "You're pregnant," he said. It wasn't a question. Isla yanked her hand back, panic flooding her system. "I don't see how that's any of your business." "And you have no mate bond," the man continued, tilting his head. "No pack scent. You're a rogue." "I said it's none of your business," Isla hissed, her voice rising. The man leaned back in his seat, studying her with those unnerving silver eyes. "My name is Dante Nightshade," he said calmly. "And I'm going to make you an offer you'd be a fool to refuse." Isla crossed her arms defensively. "I'm not interested in." "I need a Luna," Dante interrupted. "And you need protection. It's a simple transaction." Isla blinked, certain she'd misheard. "What?" Dante pulled a business card from his jacket and slid it across the counter. Embossed in silver lettering were the words, "Dante Nightshade, Alpha King of the Shadow Court." Isla's blood turned to ice. The Shadow Court. The most powerful, and most feared, pack in the entire continent. They controlled everything: politics, business, the underground. And Dante Nightshade was their king. "You're insane," Isla breathed. "Perhaps," Dante said with a small, dangerous smile. "But I'm also the only thing standing between you and a very painful death." "Those suppressants you're using? They're failing. Every wolf within a 10-mile radius can smell you now. And pregnant rogues don't last long." Isla's hand instinctively went to her stomach. "What do you want from me?" Dante's smile widened. "Marry me. Publicly. Play the role of my devoted Luna. In return, I'll protect you and your child. I'll give you wealth, status, and power. And when your child is born, they'll be raised as my heir." "Why?" Isla demanded. "Why would you do this?" Dante's expression darkened. Because the council is trying to force me into a political marriage with a woman I despise. A marriage that would give them control over my pack. But if I'm already married to a pregnant Omega carrying my heir, they can't touch me. So you want to use me, Isla said bitterly. I want to help you, Dante corrected. And yes, I'll benefit from it too. But ask yourself this, Isla Monroe, what other options do you have? Isla hated that he was right. She hated that she was even considering this insane proposal. But when she looked into Dante's silver eyes, she didn't see cruelty. She saw something else. Something almost protective. If I agree, Isla said slowly, I have conditions. Dante raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. My child will know the truth. They'll know you're not their biological father. Agreed. And when this arrangement ends, I walk away with full custody and enough money to start over. Agreed. Isla took a deep breath. And one more thing. When the time comes, when Caden Silverpeak realizes what he's lost, I want to be the one to destroy him. Dante's smile turned feral. Now that, he purred, is something I can definitely arrange. He extended his hand across the counter. Do we have a deal, future Mrs. Nightshade? Isla stared at his hand for a long moment. Then, with a sense of stepping off a cliff into the unknown, she reached out and shook it. We have a deal. Dante's fingers closed around hers, and for the first time in months, Isla felt something other than fear. She felt power. And she was going to use it to make Caden Silverpeak pay for everything he'd done. Forbidden romance and secrets. The queen who refused to kneel. Marriage to the Alpha King wasn't a fairy tale, it was a battlefield dressed in silk and diamonds. And Isla Monroe was about to learn that surviving in Dante Nightshade's world required more than just playing a role. It required becoming someone she never thought she could be. Someone dangerous. The Nightshade estate was a fortress masquerading as a palace. Towering obsidian walls surrounded the property, patrolled by warriors who moved like shadows. The mansion itself was a masterpiece of dark elegance, all black marble, floor-to-ceiling windows, and chandeliers that looked like frozen starlight. Isla stood in the grand foyer, her small suitcase clutched in her hands, feeling completely out of place. She wore the same worn jeans and oversized sweater she'd arrived in, her pregnant belly now impossible to hide at 5 months. This way, Mrs. Nightshade, said a stern-looking woman in a crisp black uniform. I'm Helena, the head of household. His Majesty has instructed me to prepare you for tonight's announcement. Announcement? Isla asked nervously. Helena's expression didn't change. The Alpha King will be presenting you to the Shadow Court Council in 3 hours. You'll need to look the part of a queen, not a. Her gaze swept over Isla's appearance with barely concealed disapproval. Refugee. Isla's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin. Lead the way. The transformation. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of stylists, tailors, and makeup artists. Isla was scrubbed, polished, dressed, and decorated like a doll. When they finally allowed her to look in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back wore a floor-length gown of midnight blue silk that somehow made her pregnancy look regal rather than awkward. Her dark hair had been styled in soft waves that cascaded down her back, and her makeup was subtle but transformative, emphasizing her high cheekbones and making her hazel eyes look almost golden. She looked like a queen. But she didn't feel like one. He's waiting for you in his study, Helena said, gesturing toward a set of imposing double doors at the end of the hallway. Isla's heart hammered as she approached. She knocked softly. Enter. She pushed the doors open and stepped inside. Dante stood by the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him. He wore a tailored black suit with a silver tie that matched his eyes. Even from behind, he radiated an authority that made the air feel heavier. You clean up well, he said without turning around. Thanks, I think, Isla replied, her voice sharper than intended. Dante turned to face her, and for a moment, something flickered in those silver eyes. Something that looked almost like appreciation. but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "The council will try to intimidate you tonight," he said, walking toward her with measured steps. "They'll question your bloodline, your worthiness, your pregnancy. They'll look for any weakness they can exploit." "What do you want me to do?" Isla asked. Dante stopped directly in front of her, so close she could smell his cologne, something dark and woodsy that made her wolf stir uncomfortably. "Show them no fear," he said quietly. "You are my Luna. My equal. You bow to no one. Not even me." Something in his tone made Isla's breath catch. This wasn't just advice. It was permission. Permission to be powerful. "There's one more thing," Dante said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. Isla's stomach dropped. "Is that?" "Your wedding ring," Dante finished, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond and sapphire band that probably cost more than a small country. "If we're going to sell this marriage, we need to make it look real." He took her left hand, his touch surprisingly gentle, and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for her. Which, she realized, it probably had been. "Dante," Isla said softly, looking up at him. "Why are you really doing this? You could have chosen anyone. Someone with status. Someone who wouldn't cause problems with the council. Why me?" For a long moment, Dante didn't answer. His silver eyes searched her face as if looking for something. "Because," he finally said, his voice dropping to something almost vulnerable, "you're the first woman I've met who looks at me like I'm a man instead of a crown." Before Isla could process that confession, Dante stepped back, the walls slamming back up around him. "It's time. Are you ready?" Isla touched the ring on her finger, feeling its weight. "Ready as I'll ever be." The Council of Wolves. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. 12 high-backed thrones arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by an alpha of considerable power and influence. The air was thick with dominant energy, making Isla's wolf whimper in submission. But she refused to let it show. Dante entered first, his presence immediately commanding the room. When he took his place on the central throne, the highest and most ornate, every alpha present lowered their gaze in respect. Every alpha except one. A woman sat in the throne to Dante's right. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with platinum blonde hair, ice blue eyes, and a figure that would make any man look twice. She wore a crimson dress that left little to the imagination and looked at Isla with undisguised hatred. "Lady Morgana," Dante said coolly. "How kind of you to attend." "I wouldn't miss this for the world," Morgana purred, her voice like poisoned honey. "I was so shocked to hear about your sudden marriage, Dante darling. Especially since we were in negotiations for our own union just last month." So this was the woman the council wanted Dante to marry. The political chess piece. And judging by the possessive way she looked at him, she wasn't happy about being replaced. "Negotiations that I terminated," Dante said flatly. "And now you understand why." He gestured to Isla. "Alphas of the Shadow Court, I present to you my Luna. Isla Nightshade." Isla stepped forward, her head held high despite every instinct screaming at her to submit to the overwhelming power in the room. "An Omega," one of the alphas scoffed. "This is who you've chosen to lead beside you?" "She's pregnant," another alpha noted, his eyes narrowing. "How convenient. An instant heir to secure your throne." "The child is mine," Dante said, his voice deadly calm. "And I will tolerate no disrespect toward my mate or my unborn heir." "We demand proof," Morgana said, standing up. "A blood test. To verify the child's paternity." Isla's hands clenched into fists. They wanted to humiliate her. To prove she was a fraud. "The child is mine," Dante repeated, his eyes beginning to glow with a dangerous silver light. "Then you won't mind proving it," Morgana pressed, smiling viciously. "Enough." The word wasn't loud, but it carried such absolute authority that every wolf in the room fell silent. Dante stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I am your king," he said, his voice echoing with supernatural power. "My word is law. If I say the child is mine, then it is mine. If any of you question me again, I will consider it an act of treason." No one spoke. No one dared. But Isla saw the way Morgana's hands trembled with rage. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After the council meeting ended, Dante escorted Isla back to her new chambers, a suite of rooms that was larger than any apartment she'd ever lived in. "You did well tonight," Dante said, pausing at her door. "They hate me," Isla replied quietly. "They fear you," Dante corrected. "That's better." Isla looked up at him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. In the dim hallway lighting, Dante looked almost otherworldly, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Thank you," she said softly. "For defending me." Dante's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You're my Luna, Isla. That makes you untouchable." He reached out, his hand hovering near her face as if he wanted to touch her cheek but didn't quite dare. "Get some rest," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Tomorrow, we start your training." "Training?" A dangerous smile curved Dante's lips. "If you're going to be my queen, you need to learn how to fight like one." He turned and walked away, leaving Isla standing in the doorway with her heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. The midnight visitor. Isla woke to the sound of breaking glass. She bolted upright in bed, her heart pounding. The French doors leading to her balcony were shattered, and standing in the moonlight was a figure dressed entirely in black. An assassin. Isla scrambled backward, but the figure moved with inhuman speed, crossing the room in a blur. A gloved hand clamped over her mouth, cutting off her scream. "Quiet," a female voice hissed. "I'm not here to kill you. I'm here to warn you." The figure pulled back her mask, revealing Morgana's beautiful, cruel face. "You have no idea what you've walked into," Morgana whispered, her ice-blue eyes boring into Isla's. "Dante Nightshade isn't the savior you think he is. He's a monster. A killer. And he's using you just like he's used everyone else who's ever trusted him." "Get out," Isla said, her voice shaking but firm. Morgana smiled. "I'm trying to help you, little Omega. That baby you're carrying? It's in danger. Not from me. From him." "You're lying." "Am I?" Morgana tilted her head. "Ask yourself this, why would the most powerful alpha in the world need a nobody like you? What's he really after?" Before Isla could respond, the bedroom door exploded inward. Dante stood in the doorway, his eyes blazing with silver fury, his body vibrating with barely contained violence. "Morgana," he growled. "You have 3 seconds to get away from my mate before I tear you apart." Morgana laughed, backing toward the broken balcony door. "Your mate? Is that what you're calling her now?" She looked at Isla one last time. "Be careful, little queen. The Shadow King has a habit of destroying everything he touches." She jumped off the balcony, disappearing into the night. Dante crossed the room in 2 strides, his hands immediately going to Isla's shoulders, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did she touch you? The baby?" "I'm fine," Isla interrupted, but her voice was trembling. "Dante, what did she mean? What aren't you telling me?" Dante's jaw clenched. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "There are things about my past, Isla. Things I'm not proud of. Things that would make you run from me if you knew." "Try me," Isla whispered. Dante's silver eyes met hers, and in them, she saw something that looked like genuine fear. "Not tonight," he said quietly. "Tonight, I just need to know you're safe." He pulled her into his arms, not as a king, but as a man who was terrified of losing something precious. And as Isla stood there, wrapped in Dante Nightshade's embrace, she realized something terrifying. She was starting to care about him. And in this world of power, politics, and deadly games, caring about someone was the most dangerous thing you could do. The ultimate power and revenge. When queens rise, kings fall. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But Isla Monroe was about to prove that some revenge burns hot enough to incinerate everything in its path, including the man who once broke her heart. And she wouldn't be doing it alone. The training grounds of the Nightshade estate were brutal by design. Dante believed that Aluna needed to be as deadly as she was elegant, and he had spent the last 2 months turning Isla into a weapon. At 7 months pregnant, she was slower, heavier, more vulnerable. But she was also more determined than ever. Again, Dante commanded from the edge of the training mat. Isla wiped the sweat from her forehead and faced her sparring partner, a female beta named Kira who showed no mercy despite Isla's condition. When Kira lunged, Isla used the defensive move Dante had taught her, redirecting the attack and using her opponent's momentum against her. Kira hit the mat hard. "Better," Dante said, the ghost of approval in his voice. "But not good enough. If Morgana comes for you again, she won't hold back because you're carrying a child. She'll use it against you." Isla's hand instinctively went to her swollen belly, where the baby kicked strong and healthy. In 2 months, she would give birth. And despite their arrangement being fake, Dante had insisted on attending every doctor's appointment, had made sure she had the best prenatal care money could buy, and had been there every time she woke from nightmares about Caden. He was becoming more than just her protector. He was becoming her partner. "That's enough for today," Dante said, approaching with a water bottle. "You need to rest." "I'm fine," Isla protested, but even as she spoke, a wave of dizziness hit her. Dante caught her before she could fall, his strong arms wrapping around her protectively. "You're not fine. You're exhausted. And if something happens to you or the baby because I pushed too hard." He didn't finish the sentence, but Isla heard what he wasn't saying. "You care," she whispered, looking up at him. "This stopped being just business for you, didn't it?" Dante's silver eyes met hers, and for once, he didn't hide behind his walls. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "This stopped being business the moment you stood up to the council without flinching. The moment you trusted me with your safety. The moment I realized that losing you would destroy me." Isla's breath caught. "Dante? I know this wasn't supposed to happen," he continued, his voice rough with emotion. "I know we had an agreement. But somewhere along the way, Isla, you became mine. Not because of a contract or a fake marriage. But because I chose you. And I would choose you again. Every time." Before Isla could respond, before she could process the depth of what he was confessing, Dante's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, and his expression immediately darkened. "What is it?" Isla asked. "Caden Silverpeak," Dante said, his voice turning cold and lethal. "He's requesting an audience. Tonight." Isla's heart stopped. "He's here? In Shadow Court territory?" "He claims he has urgent information about a threat to the realm," Dante said, reading the message. "But I think we both know what he really wants." Isla's hands curled into fists. "He wants to see if the rumors are true. He wants to see if I'm really your Luna." "Then let's give him a show he'll never forget," Dante said, a dangerous smile playing on his lips. "Let's show Caden Silverpeak exactly what he threw away." The return of the serpent. The throne room had been prepared for Caden's arrival. Dante sat on his throne, looking every inch the terrifying Alpha King in a black suit that seemed to absorb the light. And beside him, on a throne that had been crafted specifically for her, sat Isla. She wore a gown of deep emerald that complemented her pregnancy, making her look like a fertility goddess. Diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists, Dante's diamonds, each one worth more than the entire Silverpeak estate. Her hair was pinned up in an elaborate style that showcased the Luna's mark Dante had given her just last week, a silver wolf tattoo on the side of her neck that proclaimed her as his. When the doors opened and Caden walked in, Isla felt nothing. No pain. No longing. No regret. Just cold, satisfying rage. Caden looked terrible. His once handsome face was drawn and haggard, dark circles under his eyes. His suit was expensive but rumpled, and he moved with the desperate energy of a man on the edge of ruin. He stopped 10 feet from the thrones, his eyes locked on Isla. She watched as shock, disbelief, and then anguish crossed his face. Isla, he breathed. You're alive. Disappointed? Isla asked coolly. Caden stumbled over his words. I heard rumors. That the Alpha King had taken a Luna. That she was pregnant. But I never thought. You never thought I'd survive, Isla finished for him. You threw me away like garbage, Caden. You gave me money for an abortion and declared me rogue. You hoped I'd die in the woods. But I didn't. I was wrong, Caden said, and to Isla's shock, tears began streaming down his face. God, Isla, I was so wrong. The marriage to Seraphine was a disaster. She bankrupted my pack, turned my people against me, and then left me for an alpha from the Eastern Territories. My mother died of shame. My pack is falling apart. And every day, all I could think about was you. About what I'd done to you. He dropped to his knees, his hands clasped in supplication. Please, Isla. I'm begging you. That child you're carrying, it's mine. I know it is. Give me a chance to be a father. Give me a chance to make this right. The throne room was silent. Every guard, every council member who had gathered to witness this confrontation held their breath. Isla stood up slowly, her hand resting on her belly. She walked down the steps of the dais until she stood directly in front of Caden. You want to know about my child? She asked softly. Yes, Caden said desperately. Please, Isla. I know I don't deserve it, but... You're right, Isla interrupted, her voice turning to ice. You don't deserve it. This child isn't yours, Caden. Not anymore. She turned slightly, placing her hand on her stomach in a way that made the Luna's mark on her neck clearly visible. This child belongs to Dante Nightshade. He claimed us both. He's been at every doctor's appointment. He's the one who holds me when I have nightmares about the night you rejected me. He's the one who will be in the delivery room. He's the one who will teach this child to walk, to talk, to be strong. Isla leaned down, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. You had your chance to be a father, Caden. You chose power instead. Now you have neither. Isla, please. Security, Dante's voice rang out, cold and absolute. Escort Mr. Silverpeak from my territory. If he ever sets foot in Shadowcourt lands again, he is to be executed on sight. 2 massive guards seized Caden by the arms, dragging him toward the doors. He fought against them, screaming Isla's name, but she turned her back on him. She walked back to her throne and sat down beside Dante, who reached over and took her hand. Well done, my queen, he murmured. But just as the doors were about to close behind Caden, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Shouts. The sound of weapons being drawn. Then Morgana stormed into the throne room, flanked by a dozen armed wolves. But these weren't Shadowcourt wolves. These were the silver and blue of the council's elite guard. Dante Nightshade, Morgana announced, her voice ringing with triumph. By order of the Leaken High Council, you are hereby charged with treason, murder, and crimes against the realm. And your so-called Luna, she pointed at Isla with disgust, is an accomplice. Dante stood, his entire body radiating deadly calm. On what grounds? Morgana smiled viciously. We have proof that you've been eliminating council members who opposed your rule. We have witnesses who will testify that you ordered the deaths of 3 alphas in the last year. And we have evidence that your marriage is a sham, a desperate ploy to avoid a legitimate political union. She pulled out a folder, tossing it at Dante's feet. That woman isn't pregnant with your child. She's pregnant with the bastard of a disgraced alpha. And you knew it. You've been lying to the entire realm. Ice flooded Isla's veins. How did Morgana know? How had she gotten proof? Then she saw him. Standing in the hallway behind Morgana's guards, looking smug and vindictive. Caden. He had sold her out. He had given Morgana the ammunition she needed to destroy Dante. The council has voted, Morgana continued. You are to be stripped of your title, your lands, and your power. And your Luna will be returned to her original pack to face judgment for bearing a bastard. Dante's laugh was low and terrifying. You think you can take my throne? You think you can touch my mate? We don't think, Morgana said. We know. You're outnumbered, Dante. Your own guards won't move against the council's authority. Surrender now, and I'll ensure your death is quick. For a moment, no one moved. The tension in the room was suffocating. Then Isla stood up. You're right about one thing, she said, her voice clear and steady. This marriage started as a business arrangement. And the child I'm carrying isn't biologically Dante's. Dante's head whipped toward her, shock and betrayal flashing in his silver eyes. But Isla kept talking. But you're wrong about everything else. Because somewhere along the way, this became real. Dante Nightshade isn't a monster. He's a protector. A king who would sacrifice everything for his people. And this child, she placed both hands on her belly. This child is his in every way that matters. Because family isn't about blood. It's about love. It's about loyalty. It's about showing up when everyone else walks away. She turned to face the throne room, addressing every wolf present. I was nothing when Dante found me. A rejected Omega left to die. But he gave me power. He gave me purpose. He gave me a choice. And I choose him. Today. Tomorrow. Always. Power began to radiate from Isla, not the borrowed power of a Luna mark, but something deeper. Something ancient. Her eyes began to glow, not with the gold of a typical wolf, but with a brilliant violet light. Morgana stumbled backward. That's impossible. Only the old bloodlines. The Luna bloodline, Dante breathed, staring at Isla in awe. You're descended from the original Luna. The first queen. Isla felt it then, the awakening of something that had been dormant inside her all along. Power flooded through her veins, her wolf surging to the surface with a strength she'd never felt before. I am Isla Nightshade, she declared, her voice echoing with supernatural authority. Luna of the Shadow Court. Mate of the Alpha King. And I will burn anyone who threatens my family. The council guards lowered their weapons, unable to resist the command in her voice. Even Morgana looked terrified. The old bloodline bows to no council, Dante said, moving to stand beside Isla. He took her hand, their fingers intertwining. And I bow to no one but my queen. He turned to Morgana. You came here with guards to arrest a king. But you forgot one thing, kings don't surrender. They conquer. What happened next was a blur. Dante's wolves poured into the throne room, overwhelming the council's forces. Morgana tried to flee but was captured by Kira before she could reach the door. And Caden, pathetic, desperate Caden, tried to run but found his path blocked by Isla herself. You betrayed me twice, Isla said softly, her violet eyes boring into his soul. Once when you rejected me. And again when you sold me out to save yourself. I'm sorry, Caden sobbed. Please, Isla. I still love you. No, you don't, Isla said. You love power. And now you have none. She turned to Dante. What should we do with him? Dante smiled darkly. Let him live. Let him watch as you become the most powerful Luna in history. Let him watch as you raise a child who will be everything he never could be. Let him live with his regret every single day for the rest of his miserable life. Isla nodded. Strip him of his alpha title. Make him rogue. Let him experience everything he put me through. As guards dragged a screaming Caden away, Isla turned back to Dante. The power still thrummed through her veins, and she knew her life would never be the same. You awakened the old blood, Dante murmured, cupping her face in his hands. You became what you were always meant to be. I became who I needed to be, Isla corrected. For you. For our child. For us. Dante kissed her then, not a gentle kiss, but one full of passion, promise, and possession. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Isla Nightshade. Not because of your bloodline. Not because of your power. But because you're you. Fierce. Loyal. Mine. I love you too, Isla whispered. My king. My mate. My choice. Epilogue, 2 years later. The Nightshade estate gardens were filled with laughter. A little girl with dark hair and violet eyes chased butterflies through the flowers, her squeals of delight echoing across the grounds. Beside her, a massive black wolf, Dante in his shifted form, pretended to be slow enough for her to catch him. Isla sat on a blanket, one hand resting on her swollen belly. She was pregnant again, this time with twins. Real Nightshade heirs, conceived in love rather than desperation. Daddy, faster. Their daughter, Luna, named after the bloodline she carried, demanded. Dante shifted back to human form, scooping the toddler up and tossing her in the air. Her giggles were music to Isla's ears. Your Majesty, Helena said, approaching with a letter. This just arrived. From the council. Isla opened it, scanning the contents, then smiled. They're officially recognizing our daughter as heir to both the Shadow Court and the Luna bloodline. And they're appointing me as head of the council's Luna division. Dante sat down beside her, pulling her into his arms. You've come a long way from the woman crying in the rain outside Silver Peak. We both have, Isla said. You're no longer the cold king everyone feared. You're a father. A husband. A man who chose love over power. I chose you, Dante corrected. Everything else just came with the package. As they sat there, their daughter playing at their feet and new life growing inside Isla, they both knew the truth. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so beautiful, so powerful, so full of love that your enemies can only watch from the outside and realize they lost everything that ever mattered. And Caden Silver Peak, now working as a low-level enforcer in a minor pack, stripped of his title and his pride, would spend every day for the rest of his life knowing exactly what he'd thrown away. The Alpha King and his Luna Queen had won. Not through violence or cruelty, but through love, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond they'd forged in the fires of betrayal and pain. And they lived powerfully ever after.